life had always been a carefully orchestrated performance of scarcity at home. My parents painted a picture of perpetual financial struggle, a constant narrative of bills too high, incomes too low, and dreams just out of reach. I grew up understanding the value of every penny, absorbing their complaints like lessons. Yet, beneath the surface of their perpetual hardship, there was always an unspoken assumption that I, their child, would eventually step in and alleviate their burdens. The demand arrived not with a discussion, but with an ultimatum. One evening, as if a switch had been flipped, the usual sighs about money were replaced by a sharp, pointed demand. The family mortgage, with its substantial monthly payments, was now my responsibility. My own modest earnings, I was told, were perfectly suited for this critical task. I stumbled, my mind trying to process the sudden shift. This wasn't a request, it was an expectation cloaked in authority. When I tentatively voiced a question, a query about the feasibility, the dam of their manufactured hardship broke. The air in the room grew thick with an anger I hadn't witnessed before. Their faces contorted, their voices rising in a fury that was both terrifying and deeply unsettling. The familiar tales of woe transformed into accusations, and the core of their rage was a single, brutal command: get out. Never come back. The words struck like physical blows, shattering the fragile illusion of family that had, until that moment, held me captive. Hurt, yes, but more than that, a profound sense of betrayal washed over me. The carefully constructed foundation of our relationship had crumbled into dust. I left that night, not with a suitcase full of belongings, but with a heart heavy with a grief I hadn't anticipated. I cut all ties, not out of spite, but out of a need to protect myself, to find solid ground on my own terms. The silence that followed was absolute. Weeks bled into months, each day a step further away from the suffocating drama of my past. I focused on building my own life, establishing my independence, finding a quiet strength I never knew I possessed. Then, the inevitable call came. It was my mother's voice, strained and anxious, a stark contrast to the fury of my departure. The initial desperation was masked, but it was there, a thinly veiled plea for something I had long ago ceased to provide. The conversation, or rather her side of it, revolved around a single point: the mortgage payments. They had inexplicably stopped. She wanted to know why. A strange calm settled over me. The anger had long since faded, replaced by a quiet certainty. I had spent the intervening weeks diligently working, not just on my own life, but on unraveling a secret that had been hidden in plain sight for years. I recalled hushed conversations, a cryptic mention of family legacy, a signature on a document I'd barely registered years ago, a quiet agreement made with my grandfather, a man whose wisdom I had always respected. It was an agreement my parents, in their relentless pursuit of ease and their convenient portrayal of poverty, had conveniently forgotten, or perhaps actively suppressed. The document, now legally binding, detailed a specific arrangement: if I took over responsibility for the mortgage payments for a defined period, on a specific property, certain future claims would be recognized. They had seen it as a way to offload their burden onto me, a younger, presumably less capable individual. They had seen it as their right, a familial obligation they were imposing. What they failed to see was the intricate legal wording, the escape clause tied to their own agreement to sell it to themselves, a transaction that essentially transferred ownership in name only, leaving the underlying obligations tied to that original, forgotten deal. Taking a deep breath, I formulated my response, choosing my words carefully. There was no triumph, no vindication in the tone of my voice, only a quiet finality. The lengthy silence that followed my explanation was more eloquent than any scream. The truth, stark and undeniable, had finally landed. The debt they had tried to bury me under, the financial anchor they had used to tether me to their manufactured hardship, was now theirs alone to bear, a consequence of their own actions and a forgotten promise they had so carelessly disregarded. Their empire of complaints had crumbled, leaving them to face the very reality they had so desperately tried to escape, a reality I had, in my own way, reclaimed. If this story touched your heart as much as it did mine, Please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable tales. I can't wait to share another story with you all tomorrow.